Imagine stepping onto a train in the heart of downtown Los Angeles. You find a comfortable seat, open a book, and watch the world outside begin to blur. In just under 2 hours, you're stepping off in Las Vegas, relaxed and ready to go. No airport traffic, no TSA lines, no cramped airplane seat. Or picture a quick, comfortable ride from New York to Chicago. Not in a cramped car on a congested highway, but on a sleek, efficient bullet train. Well, this isn't a fantasy, it's actually the daily reality for millions of people in Europe and Asia. But in the United States, the richest country on the planet, this reality doesn't exist. But how is that even possible? How could the country that pioneered the Transcontinental Railroad fall so far behind? The answer is a tangled story of political failure, cultural identity, powerful lobbyists, and a fundamental lack of will. This is the real reason America has no high-speed rail. But first, let's define what we're talking about. A high-speed train is generally one that travels faster than 125 miles per hour for most of its journey. This isn't some futuristic sci-fi concept. It's a proven technology that's been around for over half a century. Japan's Shinkansen, the world's first high-speed rail system, began operating all the way back in 1964. Let that sink in, and while Japan was revolutionizing travel over 50 years ago, the United States was, well, not. Today, a dense web of high-speed trains connects nearly every major city in Europe and Asia, offering a fast, efficient, and comfortable alternative to flying or driving. Currently, China, the United States' biggest rival, has built over 48,000 miles of high-speed rail network in just 16 years and is connecting over 550 towns and cities. Meanwhile, the U.S. has almost no such connections. You might say, oh, but we have airplanes. And you were right, but that misses the point. For trips between 200 and 600 miles, high-speed rail is often the superior option. This is because airports are located far from city centers, forcing you to endure long commutes, security lines, and delays. Train stations, however, are planted right in the heart of downtown. The journey is more comfortable with extra room to work and move, and it typically has a much smaller carbon footprint per passenger, which is better for the environment. Now, surveys show that if bullet trains were available, nearly 2/3 of Americans would use them. So the demand is there. The technology has been proven for decades. So what the hell happened? To be fair, America did try. When Japan first introduced bullet trains, the US made a weak attempt to keep up. In 1965, President Lyndon Johnson signed the High-Speed Ground Transportation Act. However, the project was faced with immediate mechanical problems, and its funding was severely depleted by 1975. Let's just say it was a weak, half-hearted attempt that never gained momentum. Now, the most famous modern effort came in 2009 under the Obama administration. They proposed an ambitious plan to build a national high-speed rail network. But it was doomed from the start with vague maps, missing city links, and inconsistent speed limits. Some trains reach 250 miles per hour, about 400 kilometers per hour, while others are limited to 90 miles per hour, about 145 kilometers per hour. Yet, speed variation is not the main issue. Consistency, frequency, and door-to-door time matter more. But that's not even the big problem. The biggest problem? Many of the states the railways would pass through had no experience in building modern railways, requiring massive federal oversight, so it failed. Now this pattern repeats itself endlessly. Every new administration begins from scratch. They commission multi-year studies that aren't finished until a new president is in office, who then scraps the previous plan and starts the cycle all over again. A common claim is that the United States is simply too large, and there is some truth to it. Long inner-city distances and uneven population density raise costs and thin out demand. When examining the population density of successful high-speed rail networks in Europe, China, and Japan, it's significantly higher than in most of the US. This is a key reason why these regions initially invested heavily in train networks. Entire communities grew around these routes, making trains a central part of daily life. The upgrade to high speed was a natural, logical evolution. Meanwhile, the United States never embraced train travel in the same way. Instead, it embraced something else, and that is cars. There is no denying that Americans have a strong passion for their cars. From the Ford F-Series to the Tesla, cars are a deeply ingrained part of American culture. And there's no better example of this love affair than the interstate highway system, built under Eisenhower in the 1950s. America stood at a crossroads. It could have chosen to build an interstate railroad system, but it didn't. The auto industry realized the immense profits of a car-dependent society and launched intense, powerful lobbying campaigns. And because of this, government invested in roads and highways instead of railroads. So people moving to the new suburbs had little interest in a crowded train when they could drive their shiny new Chevy to work. This created a feedback loop that continues today. People move to the suburbs, so they need a car. Because they have a car, they can live in the suburbs. This sprawl is one of the biggest physical obstacles to building a cohesive high-speed rail network today. However, the obstacles extend far beyond geography and culture. We must discuss the massive industries that lobby against high-speed rail through coordinated propaganda efforts and sometimes blatant misinformation. Many of the attacks originate from well-funded think tanks, such as the Reason Foundation. And who funds them? The who's who of industries that would be directly threatened by efficient rail travel, oil giants such as ExxonMobil, Chevron, and Shell Oil, the American Petroleum Institute, and even Delta Airlines. They recognize a simple truth. Whenever Americans are given a good alternative, big oil and major airlines suffer. So whenever a high-speed rail project gains momentum, these corporations pour billions into lobbyists, paid politicians, and PR campaigns to kill it. This lobbying power is a huge reason why the U.S. hugely subsidizes oil and gas, making plane tickets artificially cheap. Because if most airlines had to pay the actual fuel price, no one could afford to fly. And because the U.S. stopped seriously investing in railways decades ago, taking the train has become more expensive due to a lack of demand and limited service. Even if you solve the politics and the lobbying, the existing system can't get out of its own way. The most logical first step would be to utilize the nation's extensive freight corridors to enhance passenger service and increase ridership. Cities like Chicago and St. Louis have tried this. The tracks are there, they follow good routes with few road crossings, and can technically handle speeds up to 110 miles per hour. But there's a catch: the freight trains. They carry huge amounts of material and move slowly. Passenger trains frequently get stuck behind them, resulting in significant delays. Then, of course, there's the sheer eye-watering cost. The U.S. invests less in its own infrastructure than almost any other developed country. A significant portion of the annual budget is allocated to the military, so the reimagining of the U.S. rail system would cost hundreds of billions of dollars. But this leads to the final and perhaps deepest problem: trust. The interstate highway system was built in an era when over 70% of the country trusted the federal government to accomplish significant projects. Today, that trust is gone. Even if the government proposed a brilliant, cost-effective plan, most Americans simply wouldn't believe they could pull it off or that it would be delivered without corruption and waste. This profound lack of trust makes it impossible to secure the political and public support needed for any long-term, nation-building project. So is there any hope? Actually, yes. Despite this mountain of obstacles, progress is being made on a smaller, private scale. Brightline has recently completed a higher-speed rail project in Florida, connecting Miami to Orlando at 125 miles per hour, and it's already carrying hundreds of thousands of passengers a month. They are also building a true high-speed line from Las Vegas to Los Angeles, aiming to reduce the trip time to under 2 hours. There's also a project underway in Texas for a Houston to Dallas line that could hit genuine bullet train speeds. So now the question isn't really whether the US will ever get a true high-speed rail network. The question is, how far behind will we have fallen by the time we finally decide to build it? Thanks for watching, and comment what video idea you would like us to discuss next.